Today, we're talking about an invention that gave us all a superpower. I mean, a real superpower. Something that used to be reserved for gods and magic. The ability to literally freeze time itself.
I mean, really think about that for a second. For pretty much all of human history, a moment happened, and then poof, it was gone. Forever. So how on earth did we go from that to being able to capture, keep, and share basically any memory we want?
Before the camera existed, every single memory you had was, well, it was filtered, right? It was either your own fuzzy recollection, or maybe a writer's description, or an artist's painting. There was no way to just see what happened. The camera changed all of that. It turned a fleeting impression into a permanent fact.
All right, so to understand how this all started, we have to go way back. And our journey, you might be surprised to hear, doesn't actually begin with chemicals or film. Nope, it starts with a much, much older discovery, something almost magical, really, about how light works.
So, for literally thousands of years, smart people all over the world, we're talking everyone from Aristotle in ancient Greece all the way to the brilliant scientist Ibn al-Haytham, they all noticed this weird thing, this strange phenomenon, and they gave it a name, the camera obscura, which is just Latin for dark room.
And the idea behind it was actually super simple. You take a room, make it completely dark, and then poke one tiny little hole in a wall. And what happens? A kind of ghostly, faded, and upside-down image of the outside world appears on the opposite wall. It's wild. Artists like Leonardo da Vinci even used this trick to trace things and get perfect perspective. But, and this is the big but, it could only show you reality. It couldn't keep it.
And that right there was the huge problem to solve. This was the question that would take us from the science of light, optics, into the world of chemistry. How do you make the light paint the picture itself?
Well, the person who finally cracked that code was a French inventor, a guy named Joseph Nicephore Niepce, and he became totally obsessed with figuring this out.
So Niepce sets up his experiment. He's trying to make light paint a picture for the very first time. How long do you think it took? The answer is this.
Yep, 8 hours. That's how long the exposure was for the world's very first surviving photograph back in 1826. Can you even imagine? He coated this pewter plate with a kind of light-sensitive asphalt, pointed his camera obscura out the window, and then just waited for a whole workday. And what he got was this blurry, ghostly image of some rooftops. It's called View from the Window at Le Gras. It's not much to look at now, but back then, it was everything. It proved the impossible could be done.
Okay, so once Niepce proved it was possible, the race was on. His granny little picture was like a starting gun for inventors all over, all trying to make the process better and faster. And pretty quickly, things split into two very different directions.
So now you've got this huge choice. On one hand, you have the daguerreotype, and these things were absolutely stunning, incredibly sharp and detailed, made on a silver plate. They were a global sensation, but each one was a one-of-a-kind original. You couldn't make a copy. Then on the other hand, you have the calotype. It was less sharp, kind of grainy, not as impressive to look at, but, and this is the game changer, it was made on paper and it created a negative. That meant you could make unlimited copies.
So what do? Do you go for the beautiful, perfect image that's basically a dead end? Or do you bet on the messier, not-so-pretty one that has this revolutionary idea of making copies? Well, as we all know now, that concept of a negative, that was the future.
But hold on. Even with the negative figured out, photography was still really, really hard. It was a thing for experts only. You had to lug around these heavy wooden cameras, deal with fragile glass plates, and mix up all these dangerous chemicals in like a portable tent darkroom. It was not something your average person could do, not by a long shot.
And this is where our next hero comes in, a guy named George Eastman. He was this entrepreneur from New York, and he just hated how messy and complicated photography was. He had this simple but totally revolutionary goal. He wanted to make taking a picture as easy as using a pencil. And his big idea, his key innovation, was to get rid of those heavy glass plates and replace them with flexible roll film.
And this led to something that wasn't just a new product, it was a complete revolution in a box. And it was sold with one of the best marketing slogans ever written. In 1888, George Eastman launched the Kodak camera.
The business model itself was just brilliant. Here's how it worked. You'd buy the camera, and it came preloaded with film for 100 pictures. You'd go out, take your 100 photos, then, and get this, you'd mail the entire camera back to the Kodak factory. They would develop your film, print your pictures, put a new roll of film in your camera, and send the whole thing back to you. It was amazing. Just like that, anyone, and I mean anyone, could be a photographer. This is when the snapshot was born.
And for the next 100 years or so, Eastman's model pretty much ruled the world. Film photography was king. But another revolution was quietly brewing in the background, one that was going to shift photography away from chemistry and into the world of electrons.
You can really break down the digital revolution into three main steps. First, back in 1969, you get the invention of the CCD sensor. That's basically the electronic eye that can turn light into pixels. Then, in what has to be one of the biggest ironies in business history, the very first digital camera was invented in 1975 at Kodak. We'll come back to that. And finally, the last piece of the puzzle clicks into place in 2007 when the first iPhone put a really good internet-connected camera into everybody's pocket. Okay, so let's go back to that first digital camera. You have to picture this thing. It was the size of a toaster. It weighed about 4 kilograms. It took a tiny 0.01 megapixel black and white photo, and it took 23 seconds just to save one picture to a cassette tape. So when the inventor, an engineer named Steven Sawson, showed it to the executives at Kodak, they freaked out. They saw it not as the future, but as a threat to their massive, super profitable film business. So what did they do? They buried it. They told them to put it away and not talk about it.
So, as digital cameras and the internet took over, something really deep started to shift. It wasn't just about the tech anymore. The entire reason we take photos began to change.
And this, I think, is the single biggest change in this whole story. For almost its entire history, photography was about one thing: preservation. You were saving a moment for the future, for a photo album on a shelf. But today, it's all about communication. It's about sharing a moment right now with other people. A photograph has gone from being a static object, an artifact, to being a part of a conversation.
So just think about that journey for a second. We went from a ghost-like image on the wall of a dark room to a blurry image on a metal plate, all the way to a device in our pocket that lets us share our lives instantly with anyone on the planet. It's been an absolutely incredible ride. And it really just leaves you with one final question, doesn't it? How will we see the world next?